The massive research vessel emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system, its sleek silver hull reflecting the distant sunlight. Inside the main observation deck, Captain Reed stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching as the screens displayed data about yet another planetary system. "Another routine survey," he muttered, his gray skin shimmering under the soft blue lights of the bridge. The Watchers had explored thousands of worlds over the centuries, cataloging life forms and assessing their potential. Most proved disappointing. "Sir, we're detecting signs of civilization on the third planet," reported Officer Miller from her station. Her fingers danced across the holographic controls, bringing up preliminary scan results. "The species calls themselves humans." Captain Reed barely looked up from his personal display. After centuries of exploration, he had seen countless civilizations at this development stage. "Run the standard biological assessment," he ordered, his voice carrying the weariness of someone who had performed this task too many times to count. The ship's AI compiled the data quickly, displaying a detailed analysis of human physiology on the main screen. Reed read through it with practiced efficiency. Asterisk species assessment. Human. Homo. Sapiens asterisk. Basic bipedal mammals. No natural armor. Limited muscle strength compared to other Earth species. No enhanced senses. No natural weapons. Average lifespan. 70 to 80 planetary cycles. Technology level. Early space age. Remarkably unremarkable, Reed commented, allowing a small smile to cross his face. Another species that barely managed to crawl out of its gravity well. Officer Miller continued her analysis, but something in the data caught her attention. "Sir, their atmospheric composition seems hostile to complex life. High oxygen content, frequent electrical storms, extreme temperature variations. Yet they survived," responded Chief Scientist Adams, joining them on the bridge. His eyes narrowed as he studied the readings. "Though I don't see how. Their bodies are fragile. Their bones break easily, and their skin offers minimal protection." The bridge crew continued their standard procedures, setting up equipment for a more detailed planetary scan. None of them showed particular interest. They had seen thousands of species like this before, weak organic beings who had somehow managed to avoid extinction long enough to develop basic technology. "Should we initiate contact protocols?" Miller asked, following standard procedure for civilizations at this development stage. Reed shook his head. "No need. They're clearly a Class C civilization, barely space-capable, and physically inferior. Mark them for basic observation only." He turned to leave the bridge, considering the matter settled. They'll either adapt to become stronger or die out like so many others. But before he reached the door, an alert sounded from Miller's station. She frowned at her display, running the scan again to confirm the results. "Sir, you might want to see this," she called out. "We're detecting some unusual energy signatures from the planet's surface." Reed paused, turning back with mild curiosity. "Natural phenomena?" "No, sir. They appear to be artificial. And they're everywhere." Miller's voice carried a note of confusion. "The energy output is far higher than expected for their technology level." Chief Scientist Adams moved closer to the display, his professional detachment giving way to genuine interest. "These readings suggest massive engineering projects, but that's impossible with their physical limitations." Reed returned to the main display, his earlier dismissal forgotten as new data streamed across the screen. The preliminary scans were revealing something unexpected about this supposedly primitive world. "Launch a full sensor array," he ordered, his voice now sharp with attention. "I want detailed scans of every continent, every ocean." He stared at the growing list of anomalies on his screen. "Something doesn't add up here." As the ship's sensors began their deeper analysis of Earth, none of the crew realized they were about to discover just how wrong their initial assessment had been. They had made the same mistake countless others had made before them, judging humanity solely by their physical capabilities. They were about to learn that sometimes The most dangerous species aren't the ones with the sharpest claws or the strongest muscles. Sometimes, the most dangerous species are the ones who refuse to accept their limitations. The massive screens on the Watcher's ship filled with data as their advanced scanning systems swept across Earth's surface. Captain Reed stood silently, his earlier boredom replaced by growing confusion as the images appeared before him. "This can't be right," Officer Miller said, running the scans again. "Sir, look at these mountain ranges." Reed leaned forward, studying the image of what humans called the Alps. The natural formation wasn't what caught his attention. It was what the humans had done to it. Massive tunnels cut straight through the mountains, allowing their primitive ground vehicles to pass through solid rock. How did they manage this? Chief Scientist Adams wondered aloud, bringing up more images. Their tools should be too primitive for such engineering. The scans continued, revealing more surprises. In the middle of Earth's largest desert, a gleaming city rose from the sand. The temperatures there regularly reached levels that should have made survival impossible, yet millions of humans lived and worked in these glass and steel towers. "They built this in a desert?" Reed asked, his voice carrying genuine surprise. "Without natural protection from the sun?" "Yes, sir," Miller responded, bringing up more data. "And that's not all. Look at their coastal cities." The screens showed massive walls holding back the ocean, protecting cities built below sea level. Entire communities thriving in places where nature said they shouldn't exist. "Pull up their historical records," Reed ordered. "I want to know how long they've been doing this." The ship's AI compiled the information quickly. Images appeared showing the progression of human engineering through the centuries. Reed and his crew watched in silence as primitive humans moved stones larger than their biggest machines to build pyramids. They saw ancient roads that still carried vehicles thousands of years later. "Sir," Adams called out, his voice urgent, "you need to see the Arctic regions." The display shifted to Earth's poles. Instead of empty ice fields, they saw research stations, mining operations, and permanent settlements. Humans living and working in temperatures that should have killed them instantly. "They're not just surviving there," Adams noted, checking the data. "They're thriving. They've built entire scientific facilities in the most hostile environment on their planet." Reed moved to another display, showing a massive dam. The structure held back an entire river, forcing water to flow according to human needs rather than natural patterns. "They're not adapting to their environment," he realized, speaking slowly as the implications became clear. "They're forcing their environment to adapt to them." More images filled the screens. Floating cities anchored in the deep ocean, underground bunkers built to withstand any disaster, farms growing food in perfect geometric patterns visible from space. "Look at their power generation systems," Miller added, highlighting countless points across the globe. "Nuclear reactors, solar farms, wind turbines, they're harnessing every type of energy they can find." Reed studied a particular image showing a city called Dubai. In just a few decades, humans had transformed an empty desert into a forest of skyscrapers. They had even built islands in the shape of palm trees, simply because they could. "This species," Reed paused, choosing his words carefully, "they don't accept natural limitations." "Sir," Miller interrupted, her voice tense, "the deep scans are showing something else. The modifications to their planet. They go much deeper than we thought." The main screen displayed a cross-section of Earth's crust. Tunnels and mines reached far deeper than should have been possible with human technology. Vast underground complexes housed everything from research facilities to emergency shelters. "They've built an entire world beneath their world," Adams whispered, the scientist in him struggling to understand how this physically inferior species had accomplished so much. Captain Reed stood in silence, watching as more data poured in. His initial dismissal of humanity seemed foolish now. These weren't just simple bipedal mammals who had developed basic technology. These were beings who looked at the most hostile environments their planet could offer and saw opportunities instead of obstacles. "Continue the deep scans," he ordered finally. "I want to know everything. What else have these humans built? And more importantly, why do they build as if they're preparing for war? The crew returned to their stations, now fully alert and focused. They had come expecting to find another primitive civilization. Instead, they had found something they had never seen before, a species that didn't just survive. They thrived by refusing to accept that anything was impossible, and that made them far more interesting and potentially far more dangerous than anyone had expected. The mood on the Watcher's ship had changed completely. What started as a routine survey had turned into something none of them had seen before. Captain Reed hadn't left the bridge for hours, watching as each new scan revealed more surprises about the supposedly primitive humans. Deep ocean scan results are ready, sir, Officer Miller announced, her voice tight with excitement. The main screen lit up with new data, showing the depths of Earth's oceans. Reed's eyes widened. Are those underwater cities? Yes, sir, Adams confirmed, adjusting the display. The humans have built permanent structures at depths that should crush any normal construction. They're using them for research, mining, and even tourism. The screen showed massive underwater structures connected by tunnels. Huge windows looked out into the dark ocean depths, while vehicles moved between the structures like small fish. That's not all, Miller added, bringing up another scan. Look at this. A new image appeared, showing massive cables running along the ocean floor. They crossed entire oceans, connecting continents to each other through a web of communication lines. They've wrapped their entire planet in a communication network, Adams explained, shaking his head in disbelief. And these aren't just simple data lines. The technology is elegant, efficient. Reed studied the data with growing concern. Show me their orbital activities. The view shifted upward, revealing the space around Earth. Thousands of satellites orbited the planet in precise patterns. Space stations hung in various orbits, while debris cleanup systems worked to keep their orbital paths clear. Their space technology is primitive, Adams noted, but look at how they use it. The screen displayed a complex network of weather satellites, communication systems, and observation platforms. Everything was connected, working together in ways that seemed far beyond what humans should be capable of. Sir, Miller called out suddenly, you need to see this. We've completed the scan of their power distribution systems. The global view changed to show a glowing web of energy networks. Power plants of various types fed into a vast grid that covered most continents. But what caught Reed's attention were the backup systems. They have redundancies for their redundancies, he observed. Look at these emergency power stations. They're preparing for every possible disaster. Speaking of disasters, Adams interjected, the geological scans show something interesting. They've built early warning systems for earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, everything that could threaten them. Reed moved closer to the display. They're not just surviving on their world. They're trying to control it. The screens filled with more images, underground bunkers that could house millions, seed vaults preserving their planet's biodiversity, water purification systems that could clean entire lakes. New data from the northern regions, sir, Miller reported. Her voice carried a note of surprise that had become common among the crew. The display showed massive greenhouses built in the Arctic Circle. Inside them, humans grew food in conditions that should have made agriculture impossible. They had created artificial springs and summers in the middle of endless winter. They don't accept limitations, Reed muttered, more to himself than his crew. When nature says no, they simply find a way around it. Captain, Adams called out, his voice unusually serious. The deep crust scans are showing something disturbing. The main screen changed to show a cross-section of Earth's crust. Scattered throughout it were facilities unlike anything they had seen before. Bunkers built to survive what looked like the end of the world. These aren't just emergency shelters, Adams explained. These are survival vaults. They're designed to preserve their civilization even if the surface becomes uninhabitable. Reed stared at the image for a long moment. They're preparing for something. But what? Sir, Miller interrupted, her voice now carrying a hint of fear. I think they're preparing for everything. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. They had found a species that looked physically weak, yet they had shaped their world in ways that defied belief. They built as if they were expecting disasters, wars, or worse. They constructed backup systems for their backup systems and escape plans for their escape plans. Continue the scans, Reed ordered finally, but send a message to command. They need to know what we found here. He paused, looking at the displays showing humanity's achievements. We're not dealing with a primitive species. We're dealing with something we've never seen before. The crew returned to their work, but a new tension filled the air. They had come to study what they thought was a weak species. Instead, they had found a civilization that treated the impossible as merely inconvenient, and that made them more dangerous than any physically superior race they had ever encountered. The command center of the Watcher's ship had been transformed into a makeshift research lab. Screens covered every wall, displaying images and data from Earth's history. Captain Reed stood in the center, watching as thousands of years of human history played out before him. I don't understand, Officer Miller said, reviewing ancient construction techniques. Look at the pyramids. They moved stones weighing tons without powered machinery, without even the wheel. The screen showed humans dragging massive blocks across the desert, using nothing but ropes, wooden logs, and sheer determination. They did more than move them, Adams added, zooming in on the pyramid structure. They fitted these stones so perfectly that even today, thousands of years later, you can't slip a piece of paper between them. Reed watched as the display shifted to show the Great Wall of China. How long is this structure? Over 13,000 miles in total length, sir, Miller replied. They built it by hand, across mountains, through valleys, over centuries. Many of the workers died during its construction. But they kept building. Reed noted, his voice quiet. No matter how many died, they kept building. The screens filled with more images. Ancient Roman roads still in use after 2,000 years. Medieval cathedrals that took generations to complete. Irrigation systems that transformed deserts into farmland. Look at this, Adams called out, bringing up images of ancient sea voyages. They crossed entire oceans in wooden ships. The display showed small vessels battling massive waves, humans navigating by stars across thousands of miles of open water. They had no way to call for help, Miller observed. No way to know what lay ahead. Many ships never returned. But they kept sailing, Reed finished. And they mapped their entire world using just the stars and their own courage. The historical review continued, showing humans venturing into every hostile environment their planet offered. They climbed the highest mountains, explored the deepest caves, crossed the hottest deserts. Sir, Adams said, pulling up new data, you need to see their response to disasters. The screens filled with images of cities destroyed by earthquakes, floods, and fires. But next to each disaster scene was another image. The same cities rebuilt, often stronger than before. London burned to the ground in 1666. Miller read from the data. They rebuilt it in just 10 years. Chicago burned in 1871. They made it bigger. San Francisco was destroyed by an earthquake in 1906. They built it back stronger. Reed studied the pattern. They don't just survive disasters. They learn from them. Adapt. Improve. That's not all, Adams added, bringing up military history. Look at how they fought wars. The displays showed the progression of human warfare. But what caught Reed's attention wasn't the weapons, it was the ingenuity. Humans dug tunnels under enemy fortifications, built bridges across raging rivers under fire, created artificial harbors on hostile beaches. They fought in every environment, Miller noted, scrolling through battles. Desert, jungle, Arctic, mountains. Nothing stopped them. And look at their medical history, Adams added, changing the display. When diseases threatened them, they didn't just accept it. They declared war on the microscopic. The screens showed the development of human medicine, from primitive herbs to modern surgery, from basic sanitation to genetic engineering. They've been fighting death itself, Reed realized, and they're winning. A new alert caught Miller's attention. "Sir, the computer has finished analyzing their educational records." The main screen changed to show human schools, universities, and research centers. But what stood out was how they preserved and shared knowledge. "They write everything down," Adams observed. "They record every success, every failure, every lesson learned. And they pass it all on to the next generation." Reed watched as the display showed libraries, both ancient and modern. They're not just preserving knowledge. They're building on it. Each generation stands on the shoulders of the last. The bridge fell silent as they processed what they were seeing. They had come expecting to find simple historical records of a primitive species. Instead, they found something far more significant: evidence of relentless determination spanning thousands of years. "Keep analyzing," Reed ordered, his voice carrying new respect. "I want to understand what drives them. What makes a physically weak species push so hard against their limitations?" As the crew returned to their research, one thing became clear: humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their bodies. It was in their unwavering refusal to accept their own limitations, a trait that had been part of their nature since the very beginning. And that, Reed realized, made them unlike any species they had ever encountered. The mood on the Watcher's ship had grown tense. Captain Reed and his crew had spent hours analyzing human habitats, and each new discovery made them more uneasy. The main screen displayed a global map showing where humans lived, or more accurately, where they had chosen to live despite all logic saying they shouldn't. "They're in Death Valley," Miller reported, highlighting a region on the map. "It's one of the hottest places on their planet. Temperatures regularly reach levels that should cook their organs. And yet," Adams added, zooming in on the area, "they've built homes there. They've even created farms in the desert." Reed studied the image. "How do they survive?" "Air conditioning," Miller explained. "They built machines to cool entire buildings. When nature made it too hot to live, they simply changed the temperature to suit their needs." The display shifted to the opposite extreme, the frozen north. "Look at their Arctic cities," Adams said, bringing up images of places like Murmansk and Norilsk. Complete darkness for months, temperatures far below freezing. Yet they built entire cities there. Reed watched as the screen showed humans living normal lives in conditions that should have killed them. They didn't just survive in these places. They had movie theaters, swimming pools, shopping centers. They acted as if the deadly cold outside their walls was nothing more than an inconvenience. "Show me their underground habitats," Reed ordered. The view changed to display human subterranean structures. Entire shopping malls built beneath cities, subway systems stretching for hundreds of miles, underground farms growing food without sunlight. "They're preparing backup habitats," Miller noted, scanning through the data. "Look at these bunkers. They're designed to support thousands of people for years." "Not just bunkers," Adams corrected, bringing up new images. "Underground cities, complete with power plants, water purification, food production, everything needed for long-term survival." Reed's attention shifted to another display showing floating structures on the ocean. "What are these?" "Artificial islands," Miller explained. "When they ran out of land to build on, they simply created new land. Some of these floating cities can house thousands of people." The screens filled with more examples of human habitats: houses built into cliff faces, research stations on active volcanoes, underwater hotels, and cities created in the middle of rainforests. "Sir," Adams called out, his voice carrying concern, "you need to see their response to climate challenges." The display showed cities threatened by rising seas. Instead of abandoning them, humans built massive walls to hold back the ocean. When rivers flooded, they created enormous drainage systems. When storms threatened, they designed buildings that could withstand nature's fury. They don't retreat, Reed observed. When nature pushes them, they push back harder. Look at their space habitats, Miller added, changing the view to show orbital stations and moon-based designs. They're already planning to live beyond their planet. The screens displayed ambitious plans for Mars colonies, orbital habitats, and deep space missions. Everything designed with multiple backup systems, reflecting humanity's obsession with survival. "Sir," Adams said, pulling up new data, "I think I understand their pattern now. They don't adapt to their environment like other species. They adapt their environment to themselves." Reed nodded slowly. "Show me their emergency response systems." The main screen filled with images of human disaster preparation, tsunami warning systems, earthquake-resistant buildings, tornado shelters, fire control networks, a vast web of technology designed to predict and survive any natural threat. They plan for everything, Miller noted, scrolling through endless contingency plans. Nuclear war, asteroid impacts, pandemics, climate change. They have protocols for every possible disaster. Not just protocols, Reed corrected, studying the data. Solutions. When they face a problem, they don't just prepare to survive it. They try to solve it completely. The bridge fell silent as they processed what they were seeing. They had discovered a species that treated the impossible as merely inconvenient, that saw deadly environments as challenges to overcome rather than barriers to respect. "This changes everything," Reed said finally, his voice grave. "Send an urgent message to command. They need to understand what we're dealing with here." He looked at the screens showing humanity's countless habitats, each one a testament to their refusal to accept limitations. "We thought they were weak because they can't survive extreme conditions naturally," he continued. "But we were wrong. They're not weak. They're the most dangerous kind of species, the kind that doesn't accept impossible as an answer." The crew returned to their analysis, but now with a new understanding. They had found a species that didn't just survive. They conquered. And that made them far more formidable than any naturally adapted species could ever be. The atmosphere on the Watcher's ship had changed from curiosity to genuine concern. Captain Reeves stood before a new set of displays, each showing different aspects of human military capability. What he saw made his earlier dismissal of humanity seem dangerously naive. "Begin the military analysis," he ordered, his voice tense. "Show me their weapons first." Officer Miller brought up the data, and the main screen filled with images that made the entire crew fall silent. "Sir, they have weapons that could destroy their entire planet." "Nuclear weapons," Adams explained, pulling up detailed scans. "Thousands of them. Enough to turn their world into ash several times over." He paused, checking more data. "But that's not what concerns me most." "What do you mean?" Reed asked, turning to face his chief scientist. "Look at this," Adams said, bringing up a new display. "They developed these weapons knowing they could destroy themselves. Then they built more, created a balance of power based on the concept that if anyone used them, everyone would die." Miller added more information to the screen. "They call it mutually assured destruction. They've kept peace through the shared understanding that war means extinction." "They're insane," one of the junior officers whispered. "No," Reed corrected, studying the data. "There's something far more dangerous. They're rational enough to use the threat of extinction as a peacekeeping tool." The screens shifted to show conventional military forces. Tanks that could operate in any terrain, ships that could stay underwater for months, aircraft that could fly beyond the speed of sound. "Their weapons aren't the most advanced we've seen," Adams noted, "but look at how they use them." The display showed military training exercises, humans fighting in Arctic snow, desert heat, dense jungles, and open seas. They trained to fight in every environment their planet offered. "They've learned to wage war anywhere," Miller observed, bringing up historical battle data. "Underground, underwater, in the air, in cities, in mountains. Nowhere is off limits. Reed watched as the screen showed more military capabilities. Show me their defense systems. New images appeared. Radar networks covering entire continents, satellite systems monitoring global movement, early warning stations scattered across the planet. They're paranoid, Adams said, scrolling through endless defense protocols. They prepare for attacks from every direction, including space. Not paranoid, Reed corrected. Prepared. Show me their military research. The displays filled with information about military technology development, stealth systems, cyber warfare, autonomous weapons, space-based defense systems. Sir, Miller called out, her voice urgent. You need to see their response times. The screen showed simulations of military reactions to threats. Forces could mobilize in hours, weapons could launch in minutes, decisions could be made in seconds. They're always ready for war, Adams noted. But look at this. He brought up data about military aid missions. They use the same forces to respond to natural disasters. Their military doesn't just fight. It builds, rescues, and aids. Reed studied the pattern. They've turned their military into a survival tool. It's not just for fighting. It's for ensuring their species continues under any circumstances. The displays showed more evidence of human military thinking. Hardened communication networks, backup command centers, mobile hospitals, and rapid response teams. Sir, Miller said, her voice now carrying clear concern, the final analysis of their military doctrine is ready. The main screen displayed a comprehensive overview that made everyone on the bridge straighten in their seats. They prepare for everything, Reed read aloud. Conventional war, nuclear war, biological weapons, chemical weapons, cyber attacks, space-based warfare. He paused, looking at his crew. They even have protocols for alien invasion. That's not all, Adams added grimly. They've developed weapons we've never seen before, things that work in ways we don't fully understand, and they're building more. The bridge fell into tense silence as the implications became clear. They had found a species that had turned the threat of their own extinction into a weapon, that had developed the ability to destroy their entire planet as a peacekeeping strategy. Send an immediate alert to command, Reed ordered, his voice deadly serious. Classification. Urgent. Message. Have discovered species capable of planetary self-destruction who view this capability as a strategic asset. Advise immediate review of contact protocols. As the message was sent, Reed continued to study the displays. They had come expecting to find a weak species. Instead, they had found one that had made its own weakness into its greatest strength, because only a species that knew its own vulnerability would prepare so thoroughly for every possible threat. And that made them more dangerous than any naturally powerful species in the galaxy. The emergency meeting chamber of the Watcher High Council glowed with soft blue light as the most powerful members of their civilization gathered to discuss the Earth situation. Captain Reed stood before them, his report on the screen behind him showing images of human achievements, innovations, and capabilities. Distinguished council members, Reed began, his voice steady despite his nervousness. What we found on Earth requires an immediate change in how we classify developing species. The head counselor leaned forward. Explain why this single planet requires us to change policies that have worked for 10,000 years. Reed nodded and touched his control panel. The screen behind him filled with images of human cities, engineering projects, and military installations. We originally classified humans as a Class C civilization, physically weak, technologically primitive, and of no significant concern, Reed explained. We were wrong, dangerously wrong. He brought up new images showing human adaptation to different environments. These beings don't accept their limitations. When they're too weak to lift something, they build machines. When they're too soft to survive cold, they create artificial warmth. When they're too fragile to survive underwater, they build submarines. Many species develop tools, another council member observed. Not like this, Reed countered. He displayed images of human military preparations. Other species develop tools to make their lives easier. Humans develop tools to make the impossible possible. They don't just adapt to their environment. They force their environment to adapt to them. The chamber filled with murmurs as Reed continued, showing more evidence of human determination and innovation. Look at their backup systems, he said, displaying complex networks of power grids, communication systems, and survival bunkers. They don't just prepare for disaster. They prepare for every possible disaster. They have plans for scenarios that haven't even happened yet. You seem afraid of them, the head counselor noted. I am, Reed admitted, not because of their current capabilities, but because of how they think. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Most species accept their limitations. Humans see limitations as temporary inconveniences to be overcome. The screen showed examples of human progress, from simple wheels to space stations, from smoke signals to global communication networks, from stone tools to nuclear power. In just a few thousand years, they went from hunting with spears to splitting atoms. Reed continued. They did this not because they were strong, but because they refused to accept being weak. Another council member spoke up. You're suggesting we classify them as dangerous. I'm suggesting we create an entirely new classification, Reed responded. He brought up his final analysis. I propose we classify them as Category X, a species too unpredictable to categorize. The chamber erupted in discussion. Never in their history had they created a new classification for a single species. Explain your reasoning, the head counselor demanded. Reed touched his controls one final time. The screen showed a compilation of human achievements: cities in deserts, bases under the ocean, tunnels through mountains, ships in space. Every other species we've encountered adapts to their environment through evolution, he explained. Humans refuse to wait. They see a problem and solve it immediately. They're too weak to survive in the cold. They build heated houses. They can't fly. They build aircraft. They can't survive in space. They build spacesuits. He faced the council directly. And most concerningly, they've turned their greatest weakness, their fragility, into their greatest strength. Because they know they're vulnerable, they prepare for everything. They build backup systems for their backup systems. They create weapons that could destroy their own planet because they know no one would dare attack a species willing to do that. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, the head counselor spoke. Your recommendation. Mark Earth as approach with extreme caution, Reed replied. Not because humans are powerful now, but because their power comes from their refusal to accept limitations. We have no way to predict what they'll become capable of in the future. After hours of debate, the council reached their decision. Earth would be classified as Category X, the first and only planet in that category. The official record would carry a special note. Humans appear weak until you realize they've been fighting their own planet since they evolved. And winning. They don't adapt to their environment. They adapt their environment to themselves. This makes them the most dangerous kind of species, one that refuses to accept that anything is impossible. As Reed left the chamber, he glanced one final time at the image of Earth on the main screen. They had come looking for a primitive species and found instead a civilization that treated the impossible as merely another problem to solve. And that, he realized, made them the most formidable species in the galaxy.